Is Ibrahim Traoré a revolutionary or a dictator? His radical land reforms in Burkina Faso are sending Western investors into a panic. By seizing land from foreigners, is he paving the way for prosperity or inviting economic disaster? And what does Trump have to do with it? Get ready for a deep dive into Africa's latest power play. Chapter 1. Traoré's Land Reform, a blow to foreign interests. In early 2025, Captain Ibrahim Traoré's government in Burkina Faso implemented a sweeping land reform policy, marking a significant shift in the nation's economic strategy and directly challenging foreign dominance. This revolutionary policy effectively nationalizes all land, prohibiting foreign entities from holding title deeds. This move, characterized by some as authoritarian, is staunchly defended by the Burkina government as a crucial step to safeguard national sovereignty and prevent land exploitation. The decision has sent ripples of concern through Western investors and politicians who have historically benefited from lenient land policies in Africa. Traoré's administration argues that this reform is imperative to ensure the country's resources benefit its citizens rather than being siphoned off by multinational corporations. The long-term implications of this bold step are still unfolding, but the immediate impact is a clear signal that Burkina Faso is prioritizing its economic independence and seeking to reshape the landscape of foreign engagement. Chapter 2. Burkina Faso takes full land ownership. The landmark Land Reform Bill, approved on February 5, 2025, by the Burkina Council of Ministers, establishes the state as the sole owner of all land within Burkina Faso, enacted during a meeting presided over by President Traoré, with key details presented by Minister of Economy Dr. Abubakar Nakabo. The law aims to overhaul the existing system and redistribute land resources more equitably. This legislation is a direct response to concerns that previous policies allowed foreign entities to amass vast tracts of land, often to the detriment of local populations. The reform seeks to correct historical imbalances and promote sustainable development by ensuring that land is used for the benefit of all Burkina citizens. With the stroke of a pen, Burkina Faso has declared that its soil is a national asset to be managed for the collective good and insulated from foreign speculation. Chapter 3. Key changes, state ownership, leases, and foreign restrictions. Burkina Faso's Land Reform Bill introduces three pivotal changes to the nation's land management framework. First, the state assumes complete ownership of all land, eliminating the possibility of private ownership, particularly by foreign entities. Second, foreigners are barred from holding title deeds, preventing them from inheriting or permanently controlling land within the country. Third, the reform establishes a long-term lease system, offering both locals and foreigners the opportunity to apply for leases ranging from 18 to 99 years. These leases are primarily intended for projects related to agriculture, industrial development, and public infrastructure. This three-pronged approach aims to strike a balance between attracting foreign investment and ensuring that Burkina Faso retains control over its most valuable resource. By shifting from ownership to leasing, the government seeks to foster economic growth while safeguarding the long-term interests of its citizens. Chapter 4. Historical land tenure, customary rights versus exploitation. For decades, land ownership in Burkina Faso was deeply rooted in customary traditions, with local communities managing and allocating land based on ancestral claims. Land was passed down through generations, fostering a strong sense of security among families. However, this system was plagued by a lack of legal documentation, leading to frequent land disputes. Wealthy individuals, including politicians and business leaders, exploited these loopholes to amass vast amounts of land. While local farmers struggled, foreign entities also took advantage of weak land policies to acquire fertile agricultural areas and resource-rich regions. The new land law aims to rectify these historical injustices by transferring all land ownership to the state, enabling the government to regulate and distribute land more fairly. By addressing the shortcomings of the customary system, Burkina Faso seeks to create a more equitable and sustainable framework for land management. But wait a second, I have a question for you. Do you think this is a genuine move for sovereignty or a risky gamble with the economy? Let me your thoughts in the below. Chapter 05. Loopholes eliminated, reclaiming sovereignty. Burkina Faso's new land reform bill is designed to eliminate loopholes that have historically allowed foreign entities to exploit the nation's land resources. By transferring all land ownership to the state, the government can prevent foreign investors from purchasing vast tracts of land for commercial farming, mining, or real estate speculation. The state is now empowered to allocate land more efficiently for public infrastructure, industrial projects, and agricultural development. Furthermore, this centralized control enables the government to resolve land disputes more effectively, reducing conflicts between farmers, herders, and indigenous communities. While critics, particularly from Western media and political circles, have labeled this bill as an authoritarian power grab, the Burkina government asserts that it is simply reclaiming its sovereignty over its land. For too long, Africa's weak land policies have allowed multinational corporations and foreign governments to exploit its natural resources with little benefit to local populations. Chapter 6. Benefits of state control. By vesting control of land resources with the state, Burkina Faso seeks to actively counteract foreign exploitation. In doing so, President Traoré's government aims to prevent foreign investors from acquiring land for commercial farming, mining, or real estate speculation. The state can better allocate land for infrastructure improvements, such as road construction, factories, industrial zones, and agricultural development. By centralizing land control, conflicts between farmers, herders, and indigenous communities can be managed more effectively. As Traoré's decision is part of a larger struggle across Africa to reclaim land from foreign control, Burkina Faso's government is now in a stronger position to drive economic transformation in the country, boost agricultural production with properly managed large-scale farming projects that will secure food and reduce dependence on foreign food imports. Chapter 7. Mali's mining struggles. The struggles in Mali with foreign mining dominance offer a compelling parallel to Burkina Faso's land issues, highlighting how foreign exploitation undermines economic sovereignty. Mali President Go arrested the CEO of Resolute Mining, an Australian gold mining company, exposing how foreign corporations have exploited Africa's resource wealth. Companies like Bark Gold take home 80% of mining profits, while the government gets only 20%. This mirrors the land issue, with foreign corporations buying farmland for commercial exports while local farmers struggle. Burkina Faso's land reform addresses this hypocrisy by prioritizing Burkina Faso, allowing the government to accelerate infrastructure, development, roads, factories, and industrial zones, which can now be built without interference from private landowners. Also boosting agricultural production, ensuring our food security, and reducing dependence on foreign food imports. Chapter 8. Land Reform's Impact. The impact of the land reform in Burkina Faso has a range of influence over infrastructure, agriculture, and conflict resolution by driving economic transformation in Burkina Faso. This reform will allow the government to accelerate infrastructure development, and roads, factories, and industrial zones can now be built without interference from private landowners. The land reform can also boost agricultural production and can be better managed to ensure food security and reduce dependence on foreign food imports. Under the land reform, the government can regulate land distribution. Disputes between tenant farmers, herders, and migrants can be resolved more effectively. The South African government introduced a land reform program to redistribute land to historically disenfranchised black citizens. But progress was slow, with South Africa's deep-seated land inequality stemming from colonial-era policies that systematically deprive the black majority of land ownership. Wait a second, I have a question for you. Should African nations be allowed to prioritize their own citizens when it comes to resources, even if it upsets the existing economic order? Comment below. Chapter 9. South Africa's Land Reform. South Africa's land reform strategy differs from Burkina Faso's state-led approach, focusing primarily on correcting historical injustices, the legacy of colonial-era policies. Most notably, the 1913 Natives Land Act systematically deprived the black majority of land ownership. This act restricted black South Africans to a mere 7% of the country's land, later increased to 13%, while a white minority controlled over 80% of arable land. Even after the end of apartheid in 1994, the structure of land ownership remained largely unchanged. The post-apartheid government introduced land reform programs aimed at redistributing land to historically disenfranchised black citizens. But progress was slow due to bureaucratic inefficiencies, legal battles, and resistance from wealthy landowners. To address this, South Africa introduced a land expropriation bill, allowing for the seizure of privately owned land without compensation if it serves the public good. While this aims to rectify severe land imbalances, the approach has faced intense scrutiny and international criticism. Chapter 10. Trump's Interference. Donald Trump's administration has characterized South Africa's land expropriation bill as a racially motivated land grab targeting white landowners, leading to significant international tensions. Trump labeled the policy a massive human rights violation and threatened diplomatic and economic retaliation against South Africa. The U.S. escalated its opposition by announcing a 90-day freeze on most global aid, including suspending hundreds of millions of dollars in U.S. funding for South Africa's HIV/AIDS relief program, the world's largest. This move was seen by many as economic blackmail aimed at forcing South Africa to abandon its land reform efforts. The U.S. intervention has exposed the extent to which powerful Western nations are willing to use economic pressure to maintain existing power structures and protect the interests of wealthy landowners, raising serious questions about sovereignty and self-determination in Africa. Chapter 11. Elon Musk's Intervention. The diplomatic tensions surrounding South Africa's land reform intensified when billionaire Elon Musk, a South African-born entrepreneur, waded into the debate with inflammatory statements on social media. Musk demanded immediate sanctions for Julius Malema, leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, and called for the EFF to be declared an international criminal organization. His remarks sparked outrage among South Africans, particularly from Malema and the EFF, who view Musk's stance as a continuation of Western economic interference in African affairs. The confrontation exposed the role of wealthy Western figures in shaping African policies from abroad. This has caused an outcry and led to a growing movement for economic liberation and the right to chart its own future without external interference. Chapter 12. Zimbabwe's Land Struggle, Colonialism and Economic Sabotage. Zimbabwe's story is not about reckless governance or economic mismanagement. It is about a stolen inheritance, broken promises, and a global economic system rigged against African nations that dare to challenge the status quo. Black Zimbabweans lost their land under British colonial rule, when land was systematically stolen from indigenous Africans and handed over to a small white settler population. The 1930 Land Apportionment Act, passed by the British-backed Southern Rhodesian government, made it illegal for black Africans to own land outside of designated native reserves. To understand Zimbabwe's land reform, we must start with how black Zimbabweans lost their land in the first place. The West loves to use Zimbabwe as a cautionary tale warning other African nations against land reform. But what they refuse to acknowledge is the deeper historical and economic reality of Zimbabwe's land struggle. Hold on a second. What's your take? Are these leaders true revolutionaries fighting for their people, or are they inviting disaster with these policies? Let me your thoughts in the below. Chapter 13. A new anti-neocolonial movement. Africa's fight for self-determination. The confrontation between South Africa and Western interests is part of a larger continental struggle, where figures like Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso and Julius Malema in South Africa are at the forefront of a new anti-neocolonial movement seeking to break free from Western economic domination and strengthen African self-governance and sovereignty. They reject foreign-imposed policies that prioritize Western interests over African development. Ultimately, this crisis is more than just a dispute over land. It is a struggle for African self-determination, economic liberation, and the right to chart its own future without external interference. This movement has gained traction across several African nations, where leaders are demanding a more equitable global economic order that prioritizes Africa's needs rather than serving as a resource base for Western corporations. From Burkina Faso to South Africa and Zimbabwe, the fight for land is a fight for sovereignty. It's a battle against neo-colonialism and a demand for a fairer world. The journey is far from over, but the message is clear. Africa is rising, and it's reclaiming its future. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more insightful analysis on the shifting sands of global power. Thanks for watching.